first time I ordered this bike, I looked at it for a good hour in my living room, and I was like, what have I done? My name's Gauthier. I'm an old-fashioned bike rider, and this is my steed. I found one of these in California and I ordered it, and then I started riding it in the city, and you just grab the handlebars firmly and you kind of scoot until you find your balance. Then you can sit on the seat. At first it was an experience, now it's like an addiction. When you pedal, you can feel all the bumps. You're like really high on the seat, like a horse kind of. And it gives you the feeling of kind of flying. Just the thrill of trying to relive like what they used to live back then. The speed, you can get good speed with this bike, maybe 20 clicks. This one doesn't have any brakes, so you kind of reduce your speed with leg power, and you gotta be able to dismount really quickly if something happens. So what they had before this bike was called the velocipede, and it was like all steel construction. The wheels were about this high, both same size wheels with the crank on the front wheel. So it was effective back then. It was a French invention, and they did races with those bikes, but at some point they kind of realized that the speed was limited because of the size of the wheel. They understood that to have more speed, they have to build a bigger wheel. So the problem then became how to get on top of the bigger wheel. That's when they came up with the backbone. And the backbone has a peg, well, you can call it a mounting bracket or a peg. I call it a peg, and you step on the peg to hop on the seat. So that's one of the interesting things about this bike, is that you have to actually mount it, and it presents a challenge in comparison to the safety bikes that we have today, which doesn't present a challenge to get on the seat. And then you have the handlebars. Some of them have like a spoon brake, and you can slow down the wheel and as the spoon rubs on the tire. And this bike doesn't have any brakes, but what it does have is a solid rubber tire. And so this tire has no air chamber. It's a solid rubber tire, and there's a steel wire inside that crosses like this, and that's all that is holding the rubber on the rim. And when you install this solid rubber tire, you have kind of a tensioner come along, and then you do like a half twist with the wheel, and it kind of locks the wires together, and then you cut them and you push the rubber back together. So that's the wheel. And then we have the seat. This seat is a spring seat. It's kind of a saddle that resembles a little bit the saddle of a horse. And back then this is like a modern spring seat, but back then was just a piece of leather. And they had a problem back then with the bike theft like we do today. And what they would do is just remove the leather from the seat, and that would prevent anybody who wanted to steal the bike to leave with the bike, because you absolutely cannot ride this bike if you're not seated. The only purpose of this small wheel is to support the front wheel, which is the larger one. And I have here little replicas of oil lamps that they would use back then. Not so much as to light your way, because I doubt they would ride in the evening or in the night with these bikes, as the roads were really bad, and the danger of tipping over like this would certainly be a concern. So these lamps, which look like cameras, but they're actually oil lamps, would just signal to the up-and-coming horse and buggies or tramways that there was somebody coming on a bicycle. One of the first names that rings my mind is velocipede. The velocipede, most older folks, when they see me in the street, they say, oh look, it's a velocipede. But the velocipede is not completely right, because it refers to the first bike, which was all a steel construction, and came around in 1850s, kind of. This bike is called in Britain the penny-farthing, because in England the penny was the bigger piece of coin. You know, the everyday coin, like we have loonies here. The penny was the bigger coin and the farthing was the smaller coin. That's why they called it the penny-farthing. That's where the name comes from. And in America, it was known as the high wheel because the wheel is high. And then it just became the wheel because it's obvious, it's like all you see is the wheel. But the most common name in America was the ordinary because this bike was so much in such a production in America in the 1880s. They made 5 million copies of these, so it just became the ordinary bike. And another name I can think of is the boneshaker because of you know, the way this bike rides. It has no air chamber, so the ride is really felt and you can really feel all the bumps. So they called it the boneshaker. Also because the first time you ride it, you shake so much, it just shakes your bones. And the French name for this bike is Le Grand B. That's a name I didn't know of. I had some French friends from France in Montreal that they told me the name was Grand B because it's B like two wheels and Grand, you know, high wheel. This map is from 1897 and it's the first road map of Montreal. The first cars in Montreal came around 1899. So that explains why the first road map in Montreal was a cycling map. This map was commissioned by an insurance company. The whole deal about this was to promote cycling in the city. By drawing a map, you sure like gets people be more interested in riding the bikes because they know where they're going.
It's crazy because I look at some of these and I recognize some where bike paths like are now. Like I'm thinking here along the water in Verdun.
Yeah, that would be like the Canal La Chine bike path, and then you have the Saint Denis here. And Rockland was called Rocky Lane, and it became Rockland. It can kind of show people that we used to have our place in the streets, and we should try and gain it back. If we keep going faster and faster in the streets, it's not going to work out for anybody. This is kind of the ideal instrument to promote a slower life beat.
Well, time for me to give it a shot.
Put your left foot on the peg.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I'll just hold it and you can just...
Monkey climb it?
Yeah, that's going to help you.
Oh my god.
Yeah,
oh my
just
god. Oh my god.
sit on the seat, don't worry. You're good, yeah.
Oh!
Just try and keep the wheels right.
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. Okay. Oh my god, I saw it. Oh my gosh. I am so glad you're holding on to me.
Well, as you gather speed, you're on.
Okay, we're doing it. Okay.
Doing it.
Okay. Alright, that's not so bad. Okay.
There you go. Oh.
Yes! I survived.
You survived.